everyone, so today is the next episode in my Shield debriefing series. I cannot recall the title, so I will have it right here. It is also the title of this video, so I'm just going to get on with it. In this episode, we find out that Phil Coulson does not sweat, he actually glistens, so that's always a fun thing to know. But the episode starts out with 2 adults and I think like 4 kids. They're all on a camping trip, and eerie things are happening, and they're starting to tell ghost stories, and I'm just like, oh, I can't handle this, because I'm a very scared person. I get very scared very easily, and I was like, here we go, I'm going to be living paranoid in my apartment for the next 4 weeks. But it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, and eventually you find out the one guy's like hearing these weird sounds, lightning strikes, and then the guy is dead. So, and he has this weird little wound in his forehead, so that's kind of the start of the episode. So we go back onto the plane, and they're doing kind of like a physical therapy test with him, and he says that his physical therapist ordered it, but at the end of the episode you find out that he in fact wanted to do it himself because he felt different, but I will get into that later. So the instance in the woods with the campers is brought to Shield's attention, so they are now set to investigate this, and they don't really trust Skye right now. I don't really blame them, and they have her looking up where these signatures are coming from, you know, kind of different things that her hacking abilities can do, but she tries to be really funny about things, and she tries to joke, and I'm just like, excuse me, you lack comedic timing, please just stop. I don't understand why she's still there, because if I was on this plane, I'd have thrown her off the ship, the board, the plane. I would have thrown her overboard months ago. They go to where the guy is in the forest, and you find out that there's some sort of an electromagnetic field around him, that when somebody goes in it, he drops because he's been suspended before then. I don't know if that really made sense, but when he died, he was suspended in the air, and then once they go to investigate, they break this like electromagnetic field, and then he falls. They're investigating that, and while that's happening on the plane, there's another instance where this like astronomically high electromagnetic reading is coming from. It's actually electrostatic, not electromagnetic, I think. I could be wrong. So there's another one coming from a farm, and they're going to investigate that before it goes away, so they're trying to see what's going on. And while they're en route, it's Phil, May, and Grant. Fitzsimmons and Skye are on board, and they find out that it just kind of disappeared out of nowhere. So when they get to the barn, there's another victim there with the same kind of deal. He's floating midair. He has the same wound in his forehead, and you find out that both of these people were members of the volunteer fire team of their local town, and you also find out that they were one of the volunteers that went into New York as a first responder during the Chitauri invasion, which was during the Avengers. So now that's linked, and then they go to the firehouse where they're trying to find, okay, well, what's going on? Pan to the firehouse, there is one guy in there, he's sweating, he's acting really weird, and he's looking at a helmet. And when you see the helmet, it's one of the Chitauri helmets from the Avengers, and it's kind of in this glass case. So he starts getting all sweaty, and then the SHIELD agents arrive, and they're asking them a couple questions, and then they realize, like, oh crap, this guy is going to explode soon. Well, not explode, but he's going to die soon because he's having these extreme electrostatic, electromagnetic readings. They do that. Phil Coulson is talking to him. He gets everybody out because he knows what's going to happen. He's talking to him, and he tells him that, you know, dying isn't a bad thing because where you go, it's a beautiful place. So now you find out that he was dead for however long that he was dead, and it ends up being like 8 seconds, I think, so he says it feels like a lot longer than that. So once he talks to the guy and he's comfortable, he leaves, and then the guy dies. The rest of the firefighters are brought into quarantine because they want to make sure that they're not infected as well, and then they take the helmet, and the helmet is brought on board the plane because they're bringing it to what you call as the sandbox, and that's kind of SHIELD's classified place in the desert where they dispose of all of these kinds of things. Simmons, who is the girl of the 2 scientists, she thinks that it's some sort of an alien virus from what was on the Chitauri helmet, and so Phil wants her to find an antidote for it. Go back to the plane, they have the helmet locked away, Simmons is working on finding an anti-serum for it, and things start floating around her like metal things, and Phil knows that she's now been infected. So he locks her in the lab, and now she has to find an anti-serum, and it's kind of racing against the clock because now she's essentially a ticking time bomb, and she has to do it before she dies as well. Fitz, who is the guy, scientist, he brings the helmet, and they're thinking that if they find what was caused by the virus, so if they find the DNA from the alien on the helmet, they'll be able to find the anti-serum, because humans who are infected with it, they don't have enough of an immunity against it to create the serum. So he goes in with her, he like sacrifices himself, even though he doesn't technically sacrifice himself, to make this serum. And their kind of last ditch effort, they inject it into one of the mice, and the mice, you know, it kind of glows, but you don't see what happens. Like, he doesn't start floating, he's just kind of sitting there. So they think that it didn't work. And then at this point, Simmons is like, well, I'm going to die anyway, and everybody on this ship is going to die if I don't leave. So then she knocks out the boy, and she goes to jump off the plane, and then when the guy wakes up, he sees that the mouse was only passed out. So their antidote, anti-serum, really did work. So she jumps off the plane, and then he grabs the parachute to go after her with the serum. And then Grant comes in, takes the parachute and the thing to inject the antidote in her. And he jumps off the plane, very Captain America with his putting it on while he's jumping and like going to her. So he goes to her, ejects her with the serum. Everything's fine and good. They fix it. They solve it again. Woohoo. So they're back on board. Phil Coulson is very angry with them, but he's also happy that they're alive. And then May is talking to him, and he just is talking about how he feels different. This is when he admits to her that he's the one who ordered the physical therapy kind of test on him, because he just feels really different. And she kind of just talks to him about it and says, you know, like, people who die, you don't come back the same from that. And then they show his scar that's on his like chest area from Loki, and that's pretty much it for this episode. Also, the girl Simmons is talking to the other guy from the lab, Fitz, and telling him that he's a hero, and gives him a kiss on the cheek. And I hate when people do this in TV shows. Like, it's always a kiss on the cheek and never just, I just want them to kiss and make sweet love to each other because I love them. But this week's episode was very good. I was hanging on the edge of my seat the entire time, and I was very angry when she jumped off the plane. I was just like, are you kidding me with this? Is this really happening right now? They can't kill her off yet. But so that's happening, and, you know, nothing's really going on in terms of Skye and her parents, which we found out in the last episode, but I'm very excited to see what happens next week. So that's pretty much it as far as this episode. I did like it, though, because you got to see sort of a different side of Fitzsimmons, and you saw, they kind of argued for a little bit in the middle of the episode, and you kind of find out that neither of them were able to pass their field exams, so they kind of just took the opportunity when it came. And you find out more about their characters, which is always kind of nice, because up until this point, they were kind of just the dorks working in the lab. Not the dorks, but, you know, they were kind of geeky working in the lab, but I love them, and I'm glad we got to learn more about them. And also, May kind of consoling Phil. I like that whole friendship, relationship thing that's going on there. I really like their dynamic, and May is kind of like no nonsense, and she knows what's going on, and Phil tries to hide it, but it doesn't really work. But yeah, so I did really thoroughly enjoy this episode, and I'm really wondering what's going to happen next week, because things are going to have to start coming together soon, because they are only on for 12 episodes this season, and this was already episode 6, so I'm thinking that big things are to come in the next few episodes, because it is going to be wrapping season 1. Oh, just one little last thing. They were also talking with the S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters in terms of, like, what do we do when they brought the infected material back on board, and they said, you know, get rid of it, and Phil was like, oh, I'm losing connection, I can't hear you. So he does what he needs to do to save everybody on his boat, ship, plane. I keep calling it a ship and a boat, and I don't know why. But so that happens, and then he comes on board after the fact when they go to the sandbox, and which is a classified place, so they can get rid of it. And he was like, you know, if you ever disobey orders like that again, you could lose your team. And he was like, I'd like to see them try. And the guy was just like, this is not the Phil Coulson I know. And he was like, I know, I've changed. So it's kind of like sassy Phil Coulson has come back from the dead, but I like sassy Phil Coulson. Well, Phil Coulson has always been sassy, but he's extra sassy now and a little bit more defiant. But I love him, that's no secret. So that's pretty much it. I'm going to stop rambling now, and also let me know down below what you thought of the episode. What are your thoughts on future things that may be happening? And until the next time, I will see you on the next video.